Yeah, so hello everybody. I'm Raphael, Raphael de Courville. I'm originally from France, but I live in Berlin. I've been living in Berlin for nine years now. Yeah, I've been a lot of things. I've been a typography teacher. I've been a graphic designer. I've been a card magician. I've been a teacher of all sorts of things. I've done augmented reality for museums. Many things really. And most recently, I've been doing digital art. I mean, I've been doing digital art for a long time, but most recently, I've been selling it on Higetnunk. I started on the first week when Higetnunk publicly opened, and I've been there ever since. Recently, involving myself a little bit in the transition to to community management, not community management, but management by the community. Um, I'm a generative artist. I run a community in Berlin called Creative Code Berlin. And we've been doing meetups here in Berlin since 2012. So yeah, well, basically when I moved to Berlin very soon after, we started doing these meetups with a group of other artists working with code. And we have 2 meetups every month. We have a very nice community. It's still quite small. I don't believe in chasing growth for its own sake. So I'm very happy that even after 10 years, we have a tight, small, friendly community. But yeah, people keep coming back. New people come in. Some people leave, come back 5 years later. It's nice. I believe really in trying to share my passion for code as a I was going to say code as a creative medium, which is the title of a book that is not by me, so maybe I'll refrain from that. But I really like that formulation actually. So yeah, book by Golan Levin and Take a Brain and others, I believe, which I definitely recommend. But anyway, yeah. I think that computer code has infinite potential as a medium, and that's a little bit of what I want to cover today. We're gonna start very easy. You can follow along and code with me, or you can just watch what I'm doing and just learn from it. I'm going to try to be practical at the same time. So we have about 3 hours, I believe. So we're only going to scratch the surface, really. But you don't need to know anything about code. There's no prerequisite knowledge. Typing, maybe. But mostly, if you know how to read, you should be fine. So that is what we're going to do. We're going to use a system tool, let's say, called P5JS that has been specifically made for artists and designers. It's meant to have a relatively smooth learning curve. So you can really learn a little bit and already be able to produce things, and then you can keep learning and expand your palette of skills and abilities fairly smoothly, which is why I picked this one, because it's one of my greatest joys to share knowledge and to bring more people into this. Whether you plan to be using code in your own artistic practice or not, I think it's interesting to be aware of how this works. And generative art has been getting a lot of attention lately. And I think many people maybe appreciate it, but don't know how it's done. And whether you're an artist or a collector, I think it's good to be able to tell what is good or interesting or unique kind of generative art. I would share. Actually, what did I want to share? Yes, I made a while ago a thread on this topic. If I can find it. Sure. Yes, so yeah, here I'll share this link. I made a collection of interesting books, and a lot of people have added to it. So about the history of generative art and some learning books. The book I was mentioning before, Code as Creative Medium, which is intended for teachers, but you can also use it as a student to get some interesting exercise or different kind of perspectives on how to practice generative art, creative coding. The cover is by an artist I love called Manoloide, who's from Argentina. And yeah, definitely recommend looking him up if you're into generative art. This is a classic generative design that yeah, was published somewhere in 2011, 2012. I guess around that time. It was the one book I had in my suitcase when I moved to Berlin, and been a big fan of this book for all this time. There's a new edition that exists that is specifically for P5JS. The original was for another system called processing. But anyway, yeah, you can go through this. People have added their own. Yeah, you don't need to own all these books, but if you want to know a little bit about either the history of computer and generative art, or learn it for yourself, there's lots of nice recommendations in there. And the other thing I want to mention is a page that my friend Taru and I made called thatcreativecode.page. I'll put the link in there as well, which is basically a visual compendium, a visual catalog of creative coding and generative art techniques that artists use. So it's good if you want to learn it yourself, but it's also good if you want to, have an informed understanding of generative art. If you look through those and maybe you've seen something and you don't know how it's called. Well, you can scroll through that and see like, oh, that's called dithering. Okay, and then you can go and have some resources to learn it with tutorials and more. We keep adding to this sometimes. Haven't been very very present on the project for a while, and Taru is also busy. But yeah, we'll keep adding, and yeah, that's a little bit of a taste of what generative art, creative coding can be about. But essentially, yeah, what is creative coding? I just wanted, for those of you, especially if you've never coded or you only have a sort of surface understanding of creative coding, I'm curious to know what you think creative coding means. Like, when you hear the word creative coding, what does that, or generative art, let's say, what does that evoke to you? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, Raphael. It's Pierre.
Bonjour.
Thank you for your presentation. Well, I'm hearing a lot about generative art, but I have absolutely no idea what it is. I would say that it's an art form that is initiated and started by a human artist, and then the machine is going to continue, but that's all I can say. Maybe I'm completely wrong. So basically, I have no idea.
Amazing. I love that. That's perfect. Yeah, that's great. Anybody else wants to take a stab at it? Especially if you have no idea how it's done. I love to hear that. Like, what's your prejudice on generative art? Anybody? There's no judgment and there's no wrong answers either. It's just, yeah, what does that evoke to you?
There's a few comments on the chat. Stefan Contiero is saying +1 on the generative design. It's the one that got me started. Hyper Icon is saying possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Hello.
think of generative art as creating an ecosystem of possibilities.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Anybody else? Don't be shy.
Yeah, like setting up a set of rules and then making that go on its own to create something, and then afterwards, I mean, you can choose whether you finish there or not. But like that's maybe like the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, rules. Yeah, that's an interesting. That's also an interesting way to look at it. And actually, I said there's no wrong answers. It's a bit of a cliche, but it's extremely true in the case of generative art, because I think you can ask 10 different artists or amateurs of generative art and ask them what generative art means, and you'll get 10 different answers. It's people say generative art started in 2018, and people will reply, no, it started in the 60s. And then people will tell you, no, well, actually, mathematical art from thousands of years ago in Arabic culture is also generative because it's using geometry to create complex shapes. It's generative. It has a set of rules. You create a system of possibilities. Yeah. So all of this has been there for a long time. You can make generative art with a pair of dice and throw them and draw on a page. All of this is generative art. I think I had an example recently. Let's see if I still have it in there. I'm not sure, but let me see. I'll find it. I know where it is. I know where to find it. So yeah, you can make generative art without a computer. You can make generative art with a piece of paper, a pen, and a deck of cards, for example. All of this is generative art, in my opinion. And you might have different opinions or have heard different opinions. In my conception of generative art, it doesn't need a computer. And creative coding, on the other hand, is kind of the use of computer code as a creative medium. As you could use clay or you could use pigments. Okay, this video goes in a different direction, but yeah, you can. And in a similar fashion, you can use a computer. You can use programming. You can use computer code as its own medium. That's how I view it. But I think there's no wrong way to look at it, and trying to have labels, have clear boundaries is sometimes a bit counterproductive. So yeah, as soon as you define it strictly, then it's sort of dead, and creative coding is still is kind of alive as a label because nobody really knows what it exactly means. And same for generative art, which is it leaves more space for possibilities, I think. So yeah, if you want to follow along, we're gonna be using, as I mentioned, p5.js. So you can go to p5js.org, p5js.org. I'll put the link in the chat as well. Let me do that now. Having fun in the computer. Yes. A lot of upfront work, press a button, art. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I love it, kinda. Yeah. But also I think there's an iterative process. It's not just like do all the work and then press a button, art. It can be like do a little bit of work, press a button, meh, art, and then do a little more, slightly better art. That's that's kind of the process that I like to go through with creative coding, making mistakes every minute. Yeah, exactly. You make a mistake, and maybe the mistake is interesting, and you want to keep it, and you keep working on it. That's let's see. I don't know where we're gonna go exactly today, but but we'll see. Maybe we'll make interesting mistakes. So p5js.org is the website for this tool. It's made by people that belong to the larger processing ecosystem. Processing Foundation is the sort of umbrella organization that makes p5js, but also processing.
Raph,
Processing. Yes.
are you sharing your screen?
Oh, am I not? Okay. I've been showing
Sorry, I'm
stuff.
just
And
thinking.
yeah, you're right. I forgot. That's unfortunate. So let me see screens. There you go. Okay. So yeah, I showed a bunch of things. So let me go back. That Creative Code page. Yes. Catalog visual of creative coding techniques. This video about making generative art in an analog fashion with a deck of cards. Yeah, let me see. I can share the links as well. I mean, it's not too bad. I was sharing links, so hopefully some of you saw what I was talking about. And yeah, and the thread with the different books, the cover by Manoloide, Generative Design with its beautiful full page art. And yeah. All right. So is that everything? Okay. Processing is a tool that has been created in 2001. Sorry, in 2001, it celebrated its 20th anniversary this year, and it's really the tool that started it all. There's been code art for a long time, since the 60s, essentially, with artists like Vera Molnar, who were already taking inspiration from earlier works of abstraction. Vera Molnar is a really, really interesting artist. She worked a lot with randomness, also with like throwing dice or using the computer to generate random shapes. And she's still alive and still working, which is amazing. Like, what kind of a genre of art can you say that the pioneers who kind of invented the medium are still there? That's the case for computer art. So yeah, but in 2001, Casey Rees and Ben Fry, two students at MIT, I believe they were at the time, in Media Lab, they were studying with John Maeda, who's also a figure in the history of computer art. John Maeda, he wrote some really seminal books about using the computer in an artistic fashion. Let me see, like, yeah, Laws of Simplicity is one. Yeah, they created processing as an evolution of a tool that John Maeda made called, I think it was it called Paint by Numbers, or yeah, something like that. Processing really sort of took all these principles and built them into a very easy to use piece of software, using a programming language called Java. And you can still use it. It's very good. It's sort of battle tested. I'm not using it because for teaching, because you need to download it, and sometimes it doesn't work on everybody's computer, and but it's really good. I don't mean to, I don't mean to belittle it. It's extremely good. It's sometimes often more performant than P5.js, but P5 you just need to open a page in your browser and you're ready to go. So that's why I think it's a good tool for teaching. Also, it runs online, so you can make a website or something like a website. Yeah. And so P5.js is using a different language. So processing is Java, P5 is JavaScript. And JavaScript is a language that is used everywhere on the web. It's basically the language they use in pretty much every browser to create things that are interactive. Yeah, P5 is the sister project, the cousin of processing that is made for the web. All right. Do we have any questions so far? That's a lot of information already. Let me know if I should go slower, faster. All right. So yeah, so on the p5js.org website, you can see that there's a bunch of things. So I hope you can see my screen now. I am sharing it. I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, I can see it.
Cool. All right. So yeah, you can read a bit about P5. If you're interested in the history of how P5 was created, there's 2 articles that were just published in IGA, Ion Design processing, about the history of processing and P5. So I definitely recommend reading those 2 articles, part 1, part 2. For the people interested in that. There was also a very good episode of Artists and Hackers, P5, where there was an interview of the I think, is it like Artists and Hackers? I'll find it for you. But yeah, there was. Oh yeah, it is there. So yeah, it's a great podcast about the use of technology in art, and yeah, has a very interesting website. And I think, this episode was great on the Paquete Semanal. But yeah, no, this one. Can programming language be a radical community? So there's really a philosophy behind P5 as well of accessibility, inclusion, diversity, which I really appreciate, and you can hear a lot about that in this episode. Okay, so therefore a little bit of context, historical and cultural context. It's a bit of a speed run through that. Like, I want to focus on the hands-on and showing you how it works, but I didn't want to get into this without giving you a little bit of context. Yeah, and if you have any questions at any time, you can always write in the chat. I have it on the other screen, and yeah, feel free to unmute and speak up at any time. I don't mind being interrupted at all. Quite the opposite. So yeah, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see what we're doing. Or mostly you can see what I'm doing. And so, yeah. So when you go to editor.p5js.org, or you can also from the homepage go to editor, then we'll send you there. There's a menu on the left. You can click editor. It's just below home, between home and download. You don't need to download anything. It's just there's a editor you can download, but the one in the browser works just fine. And so we're going to have a look a bit at what we see here. So when you get there, you probably will see the light mode. So I'm in dark mode because yeah, I'm so dark. But the default one is light. I use the high contrast one. Not sure what's better, but for streaming, but I find it more peaceful, more easy on the eye. So yeah, what we see here is a bunch of things. So here we have this menu file. You can save, open, see some examples. Edit will have some basic functions like find and replace, tidy code. For now, we don't need that, but yeah, it will clean up your code a little bit. Just the formatting. Sketch. Okay, yeah, we can, well, we'll see that later. And help, where you can see some keyboard shortcuts. The reference, This is going to be very useful. We'll get to that later. And about, okay, I never actually opened the about until now. So yeah, you can go there and get a bunch of links. Okay, great. So yeah, by default, we see that we already have a little bit of code that is written. And 2 buttons here, a play button, like you would have in an old VCR, and a stop button, as well as an option to auto refresh. So we'll see what that does. And this is the name by default that your sketch has. If you want to change it and to actually save it, you will need to log in. You can do it with your email, or if you're using GitHub already, you can also log in with GitHub, and I think maybe also a Google account. So feel free to do that if you want to save later. That might be useful if you start experimenting. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and talk a bit about what this here, those 7 lines of code actually mean. But actually, we could already play it. So let's press play, see what happens. Okay, so when I play, I see we have created a square. It's empty. Well, actually, it's kind of light gray. Oh, I see that my flux is still on. Don't know if that was visible on the stream, but it was very yellow. So yeah, it's light gray, and it's square. So here we see there's something called a function. It's called setup. Then another thing called function, that's draw and background. So what do you think? Yeah, what do you think essentially these mean? Especially if you don't know. If you already know, you can chime in when the people who don't know have finished guessing. But yeah, do you want to hazard a guess as to what's going on there in the code? Anybody?
Seems like the artboard. I don't know.
Yeah?
The size of
Yeah?
the whole artwork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So that line 2 is defining the size. So create canvas, and then those 2 numbers are the width and the height of the canvas. So I could change that, and you can try it too, and run it again. And now I see my canvas is wider. I can also make it higher. Now it's just bigger. That's the square. And you can try different numbers and see what happens. But yeah, essentially, I think you get the idea. If the number is bigger, well, the canvas is bigger as well. And then here we have another one of those called background with a number here. And so yeah, try changing that number and see what happens. So I make a 10, or say I make big number. So there it's white. If I make it smaller, like say this, it's still white. Oh, that's weird. Still white. 200. Now it's getting gray. So what does that mean? What do you think that means?
Is there a value of between 0 and 220 from black to white, and those numbers represent how much you're taking away or putting on?
Yeah, very good guess. So it's not 220 actually. It's 255. And this is because of the way that numbers work in a computer. We're not gonna get into this, but what you need to remember is that these numbers that we called parameters or arguments, I never know in which context they are called one or the other. I can't ever remember. But anyway, these parameters, let's say, if they are numbers, they often have a range. So there's a range of values that are meaningful, and beyond that range, in this case, it just gets clamped back to the range. But how do we know what the range is? So here, 0. I mean, I can tell you, but I won't always be there. So you need to find a way to know what the range is. So yeah, here it goes from 0 to 255, which is going to be fairly common range for, especially for color values. But if we want to know about this, what we can do is to go to the reference. So if you click on help and reference, you will be able to, well, first you're going to get to this page that has a lot of links. And these links represent the keywords that exist in P5.js. That means those are all the words that P5.js is going to be able to recognize as valid words. It's the language, essentially, or it's the vocabulary of P5.js. It's a dictionary of all the words that that exist in P5.js. So I could scroll and try to find background, or I could just search. So I'm going to do that, background, and you see it's already suggesting a bunch of things, and background's the first one. So let's select that. And there I see that the background function, because it's what it's called, it's a function. There's a word like this and parentheses with some parameters in there. It's probably a function. And here I see that you can give it one parameter, and then it's grayscale, so going from white to black or black to white. It can be 3 parameters, which are RGB. Do you know what that means? Anybody?
Red, green, and
If
blue.
you've used Photoshop, probably.
Is it
I
red?
heard something, sorry.
Is it the colors red, green, and blue that make up the primary colors when light is being shone through it?
Yes, exactly right. So that's the way that a screen displays colors, and it corresponds to the way that our eyes see color. So yeah, if you look at the screen from very close, you will see that they are made of red, green, and blue, and these parameters will tell P5, and then P5 will tell your browser, and your browser will tell the operating system, and the operating system will tell your screen or the graphics card, and then the graphics card will tell the screen. We don't need to worry about any of that, but it will tell it how bright each of those pixels should be, or if each of those colors should be for a given pixel. That's what we do here. So here, red is at the max, then green is a little bit, or no, sorry, it's a little less, but still a lot, and blue is gonna just be turned off. So yeah, if you could look at, if we took a magnifying glass and looked at this yellow square, we would see that the red pixels are turned on all the way, the green pixels are slightly dimmer, and the blue pixels are off. So yeah, that's they're basically controlling hardware with this number, which is not how you typically think about it, but I think it's a nice, it's a fun way to think about it. You're controlling tiny LEDs probably in your screen. So yeah, here we could try that, like 200 0. I think that was the. You see, yeah, sure enough, we get the same yellow. So feel free to play around with different values. You'll see you'll get these interesting colors. Yeah, have a little play around this. Purplish. Right. Okay. So any questions so far? We're still in the easy mode mostly. But if it doesn't feel easy, it's okay. All right. If nobody screams, I assume that I can go faster. So I will go faster until you start screaming. So function. So we have those two functions. We haven't talked about it so far. Function setup and function draw. So what setup does is it runs once when you press the button. You don't actually have to press the button. You can also use Control R no, wait. Yeah, Control R on the PC or Command R. No, sorry, Control Enter. It's different in different platforms, and I get confused. But Control Enter on the PC and Command Enter on the Mac to reload, or you can press the button. So function setup runs once when you press the button or when you start. Run one at start, and draw. It runs again and again and again, as fast as possible, which typically is going to be 60 frames per second or 60 times per second. And so here, we're not actually just drawing the background once and stopping, where we keep drawing it again and again, but you don't see any difference because nothing's changing. So it doesn't look like it's animating very fast, but it is. It is, and we'll see that in a second. Okay, so we could, for example, draw a circle. And say I don't know what the parameters of a circle are. I can try to guess. What do you imagine the parameters for a circle to be? What would make sense? Gonna make the size of the canvas 600 by 600. I like a square. What would make sense for a circle?
Radius or diameter.
Yeah. So yeah, we could try that. It says, see here in this part of the screen we have the console, and this is where you're gonna get sort of error messages, and you can also use it to print your own messages. That will be very helpful later. But for now, we see that P5.js tells us circle was expecting at least 3 arguments. So it's arguments, not parameters in that case. My bad. So 3 arguments, but received only 1 on line 7. So it tells you which line. That's very useful. For now, it's fine because we have only 1 circle and the code is very small. But when the code gets big, line numbers are going to be very helpful. And you can see they are there on the left. It tells you which file. For now, we're only using that one, so it's also fine. But yeah, line 7. Okay. It's expecting 3 arguments. So let's go see that. Circle. Yeah, 3 arguments. So if I scroll down, I see the parameters. Well, here they are, parameters. Okay. So parameters, x coordinate, y coordinate, and diameter. So you were right on the diameter, but we have also two other parameters that are x and y. So if you remember at school, doing a graph, you have the x-axis and the y-axis. I was terrible with math at school, so there's hope. I find that math got much easier to understand, especially these kind of geometric stuff, when I started doing creative coding than when I was sitting in a class. So hopefully that will be the case for you as well. But you don't need to know a lot of math, to be very perfectly honest. I know there's numbers, but you don't need a lot of math to do cool stuff with code. I'll try to use as little math as possible today. Let's see how that goes. So X is the horizontal. So here our canvas is 600 pixels by 600 pixels. So let's say I want to put it in the middle. It will be divided by 2, 300. 600 divided by 2, 300. And we separate these parameters with commas, as you could see already in the create canvas up there. You see here I have a space, and here I don't. This is not really significant. You can add spaces, but they don't really make a difference if they are not in the middle of something. If I do this, then it's broken. But and you can see I get little red things under it, and I can hover, and it tells me that something is wrong. But yeah, if I put spaces in between, nothing bad happens in between words or in between the commas. no problem. So it's kind of your preference. Or you can ask it to tidy it, and then it will put the spaces where it thinks they should be. And also, apparently, it doesn't like that I put the comments on the side here. Comments, by the way, I didn't mention. Comments are text in your code that doesn't have an effect on what is presented here in the canvas. So it's more like notes for yourself, or it's also can be ways to hide code from P5, so they don't, so it doesn't know. It doesn't know that it's there. So I could comment that out. That's how you call it. Comment out the circle, and see now the circle is not appearing. I uncomment the circle, and now the comment is appearing again. The circle is appearing again. All right. So yeah, so we have this in the center. But say I want to make my canvas bigger, like 800 by 800. Well, now it's not in the center anymore. So how do we fix this? Any idea? How do we make it that even if the canvas is a different size, like no matter what size, it's always in the center?
To have the coordinates reference to the canvas, to the width and height.
Yeah, that's good. So yeah, we can say the circle, instead of being 300 by 300. I mean, I could write 400 by 400 now, but then if I change it back, it's going to be broken again. So so yeah, what we can do is, you're totally right. So there are variables in P5. Variables are sort of words that contain a value, and I could use width and height as these variable. I don't have to create them myself. They're already sort of available. They are made available by P5. And here, width and height. So, well, you can see that now it's at the bottom right corner. I'm going to make it bigger so we can see it better. But yeah, it's down there. So if we want it to be in the middle, we need to divide it by 2. So slash is divided by 2, and yeah, slash divided by 2. I could also multiply it by 0.5, which is essentially the same. And if we play again, now it's in the center. If I change the size like this, it's still in the center. That is pretty helpful, and it's going to be even more helpful when we make the canvas resizable. That's the beauty of doing something on the internet, that the size of the window can change, and then we can change the size of our content to match. This is going to be nice. All right, so how do we do this? There is another built-in function from P5 that is called window resized, I believe. Let me try it. Function window resized. I think that's it. Yeah. So when the window is resized, we can do stuff. So what I'm going to do, just to show you another thing, I'm going to console log. So I'm going to log something in the console whenever the window is resized. So window was resized. I put some quotes around it that tells P5 that this is a piece of text that we call a string. A string because it's a string of characters. It's characters that are strung together into one string, like a necklace. So we have this. You can see that I put semicolons at the end of lines. In modern JavaScript, I believe it's not necessary, but I don't know. It seems like most people keep doing it, so I keep doing it. I'm not sure why. It doesn't break if I don't put it in there, but yeah. I can't tell you what to do on this one. You're on your own. It's not going to be a big deal. So Yeah, so let's say I want to resize my window now. And now it's telling me window was resized. And you see there's a number next to it. It's because every frame is doing it. So every frame that I move, that I resize the window, is going to print in the console, window was resized. So yeah, if I wanted to see all those messages, instead of writing window was resized, I could use another built-in variable that's called frame count. That tells you the number of the current frame. So you remember every frame we're drawing something. So 60 times per second, that's a lot. And each frame has its own number. And so you'll see now, yeah, if I resize the window, then it's printing the number of the frames. And now I have a lot of things in my console. Right, but that's not very useful. What we really want is to make the canvas change size to match the size of the window. Like if you want your art to be full screen, you want to resize it so that it fits the window. And the way to do this is there's a function called Resize Canvas. And there are two keywords, also very useful variables. Window width and window height. Okay, so now I run it and I see that my canvas is still small. So why do you think that is? That's a little bit of a tricky puzzle. Because I explicitly tell it to resize the canvas to the size of the window. And yet it doesn't. What's wrong? It is a tricky one. It is a tricky one. I'll give you a hint. I will resize the window.
You have to, yeah. I literally did it right now.
So yeah, as you remember, window resize, it only triggers once you actually resize the window. So when I press play, I haven't yet resized the window. So what I need is to, in the setup, also give the canvas the size of the window. So I'm going to replace the numbers here by the size of the window. And now it's the right size. And if I resize it, it resizes as well. Great. You see that it's not perfect. There's this issue there with the scroll bars. We could fix that. I guess it might get a little confusing. We have here, when I press this, we'll do it. So here we're in this JavaScript file, right? It's sketch.js. But there's more files needed to display something in the internet. You need an HTML file, and you probably need a CSS file, or at least you need some styling. We don't do a lot of styling here, but if I click on style.css, so again, the little arrow below the play button opens the different files, and if I go to style.css, I see that we have a few properties that are defined for our HTML elements. I won't get too much into this because it's not super relevant, but one thing we can do is to add overflow hidden, I think is. And that means that if there's a little more, like there's a little extra, it's not going to show the scroll bars. I believe that's what it does. Yeah, there you go. Overflow hidden. So it's a little bit beyond the scope of this tutorial to learn CSS, but yeah, just know that it's there, and we can use it to tweak some things about the context in which our canvas is displayed. All right, so now we have a sort of a reverse sunny side up egg. and we're in business. We have a resizable canvas, so this will be perfect for displaying on the web. And actually, if you wanted to share this beautiful artwork that we just made with a friend, well, first we would save it. I like to give it a name that I can remember with the date in it. So 2021, what's the date today? 2021, 11/15, Duke. And I'll call it Vertical Crypto Tutorial Cohort 2. Bam, it's saved. And now I can share it. So I go to File and Share. If you're not logged in, you will not see this option. Just keep that in mind. And here in Share, we have 3 different options. Embed, that will be for if you want to put it inside of another page. I've never really used that, but yeah, you can do it. Full screen and edit. Oh, they removed, there was 4 options before, and they removed 1, which was confusing. So maybe that's a good thing. Let me see. Full screen. Oh, there's no present anymore. Oh, that's not great. Oh no. What about present? Because present was proper full screen without the tool, the bar at the top that you just saw. Okay, well, it's not there anymore. Yeah. So yeah, you can share it this way, and then people can go and click on the little code here button to go and see the code. But yeah, you can share it full screen. That's great. Okay, I'm still bummed out that they removed the present option. The present was basically this without the dark bar at the top. So you could, show it as a website. You could make a website, host it on there. Maybe people abused it. I don't know. That's a shame. What about edit? Yeah, edit just is the code itself as we see it now in the editor. Okay, never mind. So yeah, so we have our thing. It's not very interactive though. I'll give you that. So we could remedy this by, say, drawing another circle, but this time we're going to make it move. So how about that? Circle. Remember frame count? Let's use frame count. So frame count. And then I'm also going to make height divided by 2. And let's make it a little smaller than the other one. And run it. Okay. Perfect. Magnificent. Solar eclipse. Okay. So we made a solar eclipse. We could make a proper solar eclipse, like make it look like a real solar eclipse. What do you think? I think that would be fun. So see what happens. The x coordinate here, the horizontal one, we gave it a dynamic variable, the variable that changes every frame. So whenever we run it, frame count, the value of frame count is going, it starts at 0 in the setup, and then it's 1 on the first time we call the draw, and then it goes up like to 60 in a second and more. So here our window is, well, I don't know how big it is, but like say it's, if it was 600 pixels wide, it would, the circle would go from left to right in 10 seconds, for example. And then it stays there. So, okay, maybe we can live with that for now. If we wanted it to come back from the left after it left from the right, that's something we could do. We can do this later. But for now, I want to tweak a little bit the colors and make it look like a solar eclipse, because I think that would be fun. Again, feel free to interrupt if you have any questions or if I'm going too fast. I'm happy to go over stuff again. All right, so right now we're just setting the background, but the circle, we didn't really give it a style. And you see, but by default, it's white with a black stroke, which is fine, but not exactly what I want right now. So the sun, I want it to be So this is going to be our sun, right? Sun, the first one. So the sun I want to be yellow, and I can define this with a fill function, fill, and say I could use a word. We saw that before for colors we used the number, but we can also use a word. We can use something called hexadecimal values. There's many ways sometimes to do one thing. You don't have to do it the one way that everybody else is doing it. P5 gives you a bunch of options. So I'm going to say yellow. See what happens. Okay, yellow is fine. The background is also a form of yellow, so that's not okay. I want it to be a sky, say. So let's make it dark thing. But now we see a problem. So I just wanted the first circle to be yellow, but you see the second one is yellow too. And this is a very important concept that I want to mention is the order in which the code is interpreted. It goes from top to bottom. So we draw the background first, then we'd say, okay, fill things, like fill the objects that we draw next in yellow. So now I want to draw a circle, it's going to be yellow. Now I want to draw another circle, it's going to be yellow. If I draw a square or whatever else, it will be yellow too. Because we said from now on, yellow. One way to think about it is that you're giving instructions to a painter, and she's a very accurate painter, but she's very stubborn and she follows the rules exactly the way you told her to do it. And so if you say, okay, now pick your yellow paint bucket and use the brush and that paint bucket, well, she's going to use the yellow for everything else you say next. So now if I said, okay, next time I want this one to be a different color, well, I have to specify this before I draw the circle. So here I'm going to say I want it to be black, but not as black as the background. So let's give it a 50, for example, and run it. And now we have our, yes. Okay, great. We have our solar eclipse already working. Cool. Well, that's nice. All right. So what's next? We could have some stars, maybe. Have some stars. And one thing also about the order of operation. You see that the reason why the moon, the reason why the moon is in front of the sun is because we wrote the instructions for drawing the moon after the sun. If I put the moon above the sun in the code and I run it again, I'll see what happens. Now the moon is behind the sun. And clearly that's not what we wanted, so I'm going to put it back the way it was. So yeah, you can see order in which we do things is very important. It matters, and it makes it makes things look different. Okay. Now say I wanted to be able to control the moon with my mouse. I could do that. So say frame count here. Instead of frame count, I could say mouse X, which is the X position of the mouse cursor, and do this. And now I'm controlling it with my mouse. I could also not want to see the mouse cursor. So in the setup, I could say no cursor. And now the cursor disappears when I'm over here. That's good. Okay. And we said we wanted some stars. Stars is good. Stars is going to be very good because now we can talk about randomness. So randomness. Randomness. There's a random function that will return a random number and random. So by default, you can call it like this and say I could console log a random value. like this. And see, it's printing a random value, and it's going, you can see the range of random is going from 0 to 1. That's by default. We could also give it a range. I could say I want a random value between 0 and 50. And now we get values that are between 0 and 50. They still have, you know, stuff behind a comma, a dot. That's what you call the floating point number, a float, because it has a floating point value behind. It's not just like 1, 2, 3, 4. It can be 1.5, 3.562, whatever. So yeah, that's what we get outside of random. And I could also say I want values between two numbers, so like between 40 and 50. So now I get values between 40 and 50. Cool. So we're going to use this to draw stars. So we want random dots, random white dots on our canvas. And so the random function is going to be what we want to use. Let's stop it. So it stops printing random values in the console. So yeah, how do we do this? Well, let's say I want to draw a small circle. I guess there's a dot function as well, but I think it's not that performant. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Let's stick with circles from now. And our circle is going to be at a random position. And we want the value between 0 and the width. So random of the width. And random of the height. And a little bit of a spoiler, it's not going to work. But I just want to show you how to do it wrong first, so we can do it right next. So, and we're going to say it's like 2 pixels wide, because it's a star. It's very small. Oh, you know what? We could also give it a random size, but still small. So random between 1 and 5. Okay. Yeah, we can't see anything. Because it's very, we didn't even give it a color. And I see that we still have a black stroke on shapes. We can't see it that much because everything is so dark, but we still have a black stroke. So it's basically black. Maybe sometimes we'll see it if it's over the, no, we can't even see it over the sun because it's drawn behind, as a star should be. So we need to give it a fill color. We'll make it white. And also I want to stop shapes from having a stroke around them. So in the setup, I'll go and say no stroke. So everything that's drawn in the sketch after that, unless we actively give it a stroke color again, is not going to have one. And so this should work. Okay, so yeah, great. I don't know how much you can see in the screen sharing because it goes very fast, but if you did it on your end, you should see that it's drawing a bunch of stars, but they are moving all around. And so why is that? Why is that, do you think? Now, if you understood everything I explained before, it should be clear why this is not working. Or maybe not. Maybe it isn't. So try to deconstruct what is happening. So remember the draw, it's a function that runs 60 times per second. And what are we actually doing? Because the computer, it doesn't do, it only ever does what you tell it to do. So if you you may think that you're doing one thing, and it happens to me all the time. I think I'm doing one thing, and it turns out that I'm actually doing another. And that's pretty much what's happening here. We think that we want to draw random circles everywhere, but we're not. Any idea why?
Do we have to put a parameter, like a timer or something?
That's an interesting idea. It's not the answer. But yeah, good idea. What is happening here is we are drawing only one circle every frame. So it may not be obvious here because it's running very fast, but say I was to reduce the speed of the sketch by using a function called frame rate, not frame Raph. Why did I write that? Frame rate, and say 1 frame per second. No, that's too little. Like say 5 frames per second. Now you see, so yeah, everything is much slower and jittery. But now you see there's only ever one star drawn at one moment. And the only reason why it looked like there were more is because they were drawn so fast that with persistence, your eye is not able to process all this like 60 images per second. That's why it makes animation. That's why the illusion of movement happens, is because our eyes can't see things going that fast. So if you draw 60 stars everywhere every second, it looks like they're appearing at the same time, but they're not. So yeah, if we slow down the sketch, then we see that it's only ever drawing one. So that's not working for us. So what can we do? We want to draw more. So, I mean, we could copy paste this and draw more stars like this. I can try that. So we draw more, but they're still random. So that's not working for us. So what can we do? I'm actually trying to think, because there's I mean, not how to do it because I know, but how to do it, how to explain it, in which order. What should we explain first? Basically, one thing first to say is that if you see something like this anytime in your code, like the same line or very similar code repeated again and again, you're probably making things harder than they need to be, because typically what we want to do when we program is to be lazy and do as little work as possible. So, and write as little code as possible. So if you're doing the same thing again and again, then you're really doing something yourself that you should be asking the computer to do for you. And for repetitive tasks, there's something called a loop, and the draw function is itself already a loop, because as we said again and again, it runs again and again. So what we could do is say we want to draw the circle 100 times in different positions every time. And for that, there's something called a for loop. And it has well, I'm thinking maybe I should use a different loop, because the for loop is a little it's a little weird. Yeah, okay. So I need to introduce another concept first. We need to talk about variables. So we've talked about variables. We've talked about width and height, mouse X, window width, window height. All of these are variables, but they are variables that P5 gives us, and we're not actually creating them ourselves. So what if we wanted to create a variable ourselves? Well, we can. And for this, we have to use a keyword called var. We can also use a different keyword called let. It makes a difference, but at this stage, it really doesn't. So I'll just use var because it's a little more explicit that it means variable, and let, it's like let there be light, let there be a variable. It's harder to remember. So var it is, variable. And let's call this one counter. And it's going to start at 0 because it's a counter, and it's going to go up a bit like frame count. And what we're going to use is a while loop. So while counter is inferior to 100, and now we're going to use curly brackets to say everything that is within those curly brackets here is going to run while it's going to keep running while this is true. Don't run this because it's never going to stop. I mean, you can try, but it's going to crash your browser somehow. Because right now the counter is equal to 0, and it's always going to be equal to 0 because we don't change it. So what we need to add is counter, and there are several ways to add 1 to something, because in most programming languages, adding 1 to a variable is something you do a lot. It's very useful. So we can say counter equals counter plus 1. So it takes the previous value of counter, adds 1 to it, and with the equal sign, puts it back into the variable. And a variable you can think of as a kind of a box that contains a value. And this value can be a character, a string, so it's like a sentence, like we saw before, a number. It can be anything, an object. And we put the value in the box, and on the box we have a label that we write something on. In this case, we wrote counter, but we could write anything we want on this box, on the label. So whenever we later want to refer to this number, we can refer to the name of the variable, and then our painter that is following our instructions dutifully will go look for that box and take the value that's out and do whatever we ask them to do with that value. In this case, add 1 to it and put it back in the box. Makes sense? So it's going to keep every time we run through this loop, it's going to check, is the value inferior to 100? Still true? Okay, let's keep doing it. So it's going to draw a random circle and add 1 to the counter until it gets to 100, and then it's going to try again while counter is inferior to 100. No, now it's 101. Or it's 100, actually. 100 is already false. So then it's going to exit the loop. So let's try that. Okay, so it's drawing a lot more circles, but it's still random. So now every frame is drawing 100 stars. And now it feels like we're traveling through space at great speed, which is also not what we want. So we're gonna have to fix that. And one way that we can do that is by starting to understand the concept of a random seed. So, and also how do random numbers work in a computer? So how would you get a random number in the real world? Like, say you wanted to get a random number to draw, to make a random drawing, to make a generative drawing on paper. What would you use? How do you get a random number in the real world? Anyone?
Dice.
A dice? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, dice. Oh, is a single of dice die? A die. But yeah, you can use dice. Yeah, you can use dice. You can, what else? Flip a coin. You can, use a deck of cards, pick a random card. So yeah, this is how randomness works in the real world. And if you throw if you throw dice in the real world, then sort of chaos gets in. There's so many complex interactions between the dice and the table, between the dice and each other, between the dice and your hands, the temperature of the room, whatever, I don't know. All of this means that you can't predict what the result is going to be. We can't really do this in a computer, mostly. It's very hard in a computer because a computer, you don't want the computer to be random. You want the computer to be doing exactly the thing that you want it to do every time. So it has to be reproducible, and it typically doesn't have a randomness generator built in. I'm not sure why, but basically, yeah, you don't really have real randomness in a computer. So what do we have? Well, what we do have is like a table of random numbers, like a big book of random numbers. Say you could, if you wanted to get random numbers in the real world, but you didn't want to every time throw the dice, well, you could throw dice for millions of times because you have nothing better to do, write the results in a big book, and then whenever you want random numbers, you could go to the book, pick a random page, and get your random numbers out, right? Actually, I believe there were such books at some point, like scientists would use them, or mathematicians. Random books, random numbers book. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Look inside. Let's see. Is that actually what it says on the cover? See. No. Yes. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, random numbers. Oh. Yeah, there you go. So you could do that, right? You could store all the random numbers in a big book, and then you say, okay, I'm just gonna go and pick one, start here, and read from there. That's a random seed. So a seed for randomness is telling you where do you start picking from that big table of random numbers, like the library of Babel. Yeah, exactly. So your random seed is basically the page and the line and the column where you go and start reading your random numbers. By default, the seed itself is pseudo-random, so you can't exactly predict where it's going to be. But if we want to get the same random every time, we could say, okay, my random seed is going to be page 15 and the first line, first column. And then I'm going to start reading there. It's going to be 00700. No, that's the line, number of the line. But yes, first line, like 35997307761. Next time I run this random again, I still look at page 15 first line, and I'm still reading 35997307761. This is useful if you want to draw the same random every time you run it, and that's what we want here. So if I say random seed equals, random seed, it's a function, random seed, and I give a random number in there, well, whatever number, it doesn't matter, it's just matters that it's the same every time we run it. Now, it looks the same. And I can run it again and it still looks the same. That's cool. So see, if I don't set my random seed, then every frame I use a different random seed. That's not helpful, but here, set it, lock it in place, and boom, our sky is locked in place. Now we can try to add more stars, for example, or even more. Cool. Right. Okay. Do we have any questions so far? We've seen a lot, so there should at least be one. Well, I'll just use this time to drink a bit of water. If you want to ask a question in French or Italian, that also works. German, I can try. Spanish, not really, but just trying to be inclusive here. Yeah, no questions? I can move on. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Moving on. So yeah, so one thing we could do, say we want to set the density of stars, and we want to remember that's what we're doing, because here we have this number, and I don't like that because it's just like, what does that number mean? We don't know. It's just there, counter inferior to 600. That's no good. So let's rename this and make it a variable. So I'm going to go at the top of my sketch, and I forgot to mention, but a program in P5 is called a sketch, like something you doodle. And you see, I told you at the beginning, I didn't know I was going to draw stars, and I didn't know I was going to make a solar eclipse. Just kind of, okay, we drew a circle. Oh, it looked like an eclipse. Let's change the colors. But we're missing stars. That's kind of how I see creative coding. It's just like we're trying things, see what happens, and then you get inspiration from that, and you keep going. Not saying that this is particularly like super creative, but it's, who knows. Hey, bye, Miko. Okay, so why does it complain here? I don't know. Yeah, because I started writing var and I stopped, so now it's complaining. Okay, so var, and say we're gonna say stars amount. I'm gonna call it like this. I'm using something called a way to write variables called Camel Case. So the first word is lowercase, and the second one has a capital. And if we had a third one, it would also have a capital, like that. So stars amount is going to be 600. And here I'm going to say while counter inferior to stars amount, then keep going. Run. So it doesn't change anything, but now at the top of the program, I have a number that I can change that will define the amount of stars that are in the sky. We're playing God now. All right. So yeah, many more stars. How many is too many? What do you think? Yeah, now that's a little too much. Yeah, let's stick it. You might see that it starts getting slow if we draw a lot. If we draw a lot of them, you might see it get slow. So yeah, I don't know when it was really getting slow, but this is still fine. But I think this was, yeah, now it's starting to get a bit slow. Depending on your machine, you might not be able to draw even that many. So yeah, let's do 500. It's fine. Okay, so another thing is stars. They how do you call this? Like twinkle. They twinkle a little bit. Can we actually make them twinkle? We probably can if we add a little bit of randomness to the color. So instead of setting the color here, we can set it inside of our while loop before the circle. And instead of white, let's say, let's use a variable, star color. We're going to create it there, star color equal color, and you know what? I want to make variables for R, G, and B as well. Or better, we're going to use hue, saturation, and brightness, which is a little easier to play with colors and tweak things. So Hsb, and I'm going to have to set the color mode to Hsb. Actually, I should do this in setup, not in there, because I don't want to do this 600 times. Though it probably would just skip it automatically because it knows I already set it. But let's do things cleanly, clean code. And I'm gonna make a var. You know what? Let's call it hue saturation, like hue sat and brightness, right? Hue equals, for now we're going to give it a color, a value for hue. Saturation is going to be 100. The maximum of saturation by default is 100. It goes from 0 to 100. And brightness also. So is it going to be 100? Maybe a little less. And the hue, it goes around, so it's 360. It goes from 0 to 360. Hsb Color Space. Let's see how this works. Yeah, so that's the Hsb Color Space. You can represent it as a cylinder. So the hue is like an angle. Saturation is going from like it's the radius of the cylinder. So 0 saturation is gray, and 100 saturation is the most saturated color, and value is how dark or bright the color is, or like HSV or HSB brightness. At 0 it's black, and at 100 it's as bright as it can get. So that's what we want. Here, the hue. Yeah, we're gonna have stars that are more blue and maybe stars that are a little more red. Let's see how we do that. So yeah, for now I'm just gonna say random 360. Our stars can be like all the colors of the rainbow. And the brightness maybe can also be random. Random 100, between 80 and 100. Okay, let's see what happens with that. Okay, they're all very multicolored, but they're not flickering, and that's because, well, we set our random seed, so it's not flickering. That's that's not what we want to do. Actually, we should probably set the randomness after we call our randoms, and it might still not work. Ooh, interesting. What have I done? Random seed. Oh, that's interesting. Interesting. Maybe I need to set another random seed. So, sometimes you try things and it doesn't work. That also happens. Oh, interesting. How did I break this? Okay, yeah, well, now we're back to square one. Oh. Huh. I'm gonna manage to get this thing to flick a twinkle, twinkle, twinkle. If you have any ideas, let me know. It's not a quiz. I really genuinely don't know what. I genuinely don't know why it's not working. So we're doing the while. Then every time we're setting the random seed for random, aha, Got it. I got it. So the problem with this is that if we set our random seed always to the same point, then it's going to select always the same numbers. That's what we said. So if I set my random seed right before I set the random here for the position of the circle, well, the position of the circle is always going to be the same. The way that it works is every time you call random after you set random seed, it's gonna increment the seed. It's gonna pick the next one, right? Bye, Gabriel. So yeah, it's gonna pick the next one every time. But if we keep setting it to 0, it's like it was the first time that we called random again. And so it's gonna pick like, well, apparently the first one was somewhere in the bottom right, right? So there's ways we could fix that. One way would be to say we say random seed plus counter, and I think that would work. No, but it does look interesting. Ha! Oh, that's cool. That does look cool, though. Yeah, happy accidents, you know. Okay, so no, this doesn't solve our problem. So I guess we could twinkle it another way. We could use noise. So there's a noise function, and noise is another type of randomness that instead of being like throwing a dice, it's more like something continuous. It's using something called Perlin noise. That creates random values that are sort of correlated to the one that came before. So that's how it looks. So if you compare it to random, like random, there's no correlation. Like the previous number, the next number are exactly have no connection with each other. Like one can be 0, the next one can be 100, the next one can be 3,000 million. It doesn't matter. But with Perlin noise, those numbers sort of smoothly transition between each other, which is very useful for a lot of things. So here, what we could do is say noise frame count times 360, because it's going to be between 0 and 1 by default. So let's see. Yeah, now they're sort of twinkling. Bit mad, but it works. And brightness, we could do a similar trick. Noise frame count, but here we can't multiply it by 100 because we only want the brightness to be between 80 and 100. So we could use something else that is called the map function, and I'm going to wrap a map function around my noise map. And map function, you give it a number, then you give it the range, the source range and the output range, like the input range and the output range. The input range here is between 0 and 1, and the output range is between 80 and 100. And feel free to scream at any time if I'm going too fast. Okay, so yeah, we see the brightness is changing. We have another problem, which is it's the same for all the stars. I don't really like that. So we maybe want to add to our frame count. We want to add the counter. That could work. Let's see. We might have to multiply the counter by something. Yeah, it's already good. Pretty good. Okay. And they're twinkling twinkling a little bit. They're twinkling a lot. Okay. Okay. Yeah. This is now a little bit hard to read. So let's add a little bit of spacing here. Okay. And I think that yeah, the color should be maybe not like completely colors of the rainbow, but for now it's fine. Let's see. Oh, and what happens if I stretch it? Oh, it works. Surprised. Oh no, well I shouldn't be. Yeah, because the position, random width. Ah, interesting. Yeah, no, it scales nicely. Nice side effects. Okay, yeah, there you go. I think the moon I want to make a little darker now. Maybe 20. Whee. Okay, and maybe I'll make it a bit bigger. Or you know what? I'm gonna give it a variable. We can tweak this ourselves, like moon size, sun size. If I run it, it's gonna tell me that those variables don't exist. See, sun size is not defined, so I need to define it. Var sun size equals, what was it again? I don't remember. Var moon size, I think it was 200 maybe. Oh yeah, it was. And 180 for the moon. Yeah, okay. About 95. Yeah, like that. That's cool. Yeah, okay. All right. What next? How do you, yeah, what would you like to see? We can see a bunch of things. There's many things we can do, but do you have particular things that you're curious about? Or you have questions? Either way. I'll keep going after we get a question. After I hear your beautiful voice.
I was just trying here to repeat somehow what you were doing, and it's been quite a fun. I don't know why. I never tried to use processing or P5. I don't know. And I was just trying to think how those generative arts like with pixels and 3D are made. You know, like the work of Pixelful. You know, how those things works. You know.
Yeah. So Pixelful is using different kinds of techniques. This one's by Lokme. Yeah. So you mean yeah, the sort of classic Pixelful stuff.
Yeah.
With 3D. I think Pixelful is using. I don't want to say. Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Pixelchunk.
Got art. I think Pixelful is using P5JS. If I'm, what does it say? 3D
Yeah. No.
pixel art.
I already know that it is processing, but how those 3D things happen in the coding, you know, like how it start. My head can't think about this.
Yeah. Well, let's try it. I think I want to leave this one where it is and start from a fresh sketch because it's going to be, yeah, if we keep adding to it and some people are left behind, I'd rather start with a fresh one and then we can see a little bit of 3D. That's a good question. There was also a question by Pop Art by Beba. Would you say that you usually have an idea in mind of what you want to achieve and keep playing around until you obtain that result? Or would you say that you let the randomness take you to unexpected places artistically? It's a bit of both, to be honest. Sometimes I have a thing I want to experiment with. Maybe it's maybe it's an algorithm from the creative code page that Taru and I made. There are some algorithms that I really want to play with that I haven't had a chance to try yet. Like was it like wave function collapse, for example, is one, or conf chain. Like let's say conf chain, it's really cool. it's a way to generate patterns, and I'm very interested in patterns, and I want to understand this conf chain stuff, and I think it could help me to generate some cool visuals. So someday I will get into it and yeah, and try to learn it. Can generate maze-like patterns or kind of cave shapes, things like that. Yeah, caves. So I want to learn this. So maybe, I go into a tutorial, I start to learn about that, and then somewhere along the way, an idea comes up, like it looks like something or reminds me of something, and then I go there. Sometimes I have a clear idea of what I want to do. Like say, whoops. But a clearer idea, like when here I was trying, so I have this series of works that are generative. So they are, yeah, but they don't look generative because I was using film grain in some way to add a more analog look to them. Take forever to load, unfortunately. Yeah, well, I think the latest one is a bit faster. But the first one I was exploring, and the last one I was trying to reproduce something specific from a movie from the 20s. From Fritz Lang, and yeah, there was this diagram in the movie, and I think there was another visual where you saw it animated somehow. So I wanted to reproduce that. Somehow this also doesn't want to load. It's not my day. But let's see. I lost it. Great. Oh yeah, no, there it is, like this one. So yeah, this is diagram in the movie. It looks amazing, and it's made by a German artist whose name I always forget, but I really like. And so yeah, I tried. Okay, it really doesn't want to load, but yeah, here you can see the GIF. So yeah, I went on an exploration of this, and it ended up looking a little bit different, but still, it was inspired by this. And on the other end, this pure exploration that I did on the stream, and it ended up part of the series, but it didn't start as that. Yeah, so basically my answer is it depends. Can you source external images into Canvas, or that defeats the purpose? No, you can. And actually, in the case of that series, I totally do that. I use film grain to like actual scanned film to create this effect of old silent film. And I think you'll find that a lot of generative artists don't use images. I don't think it's like out of a dislike of images. It's just that somehow it's kind of easier not to. You have more freedom to explore abstraction in this way. But I don't mind it. I think it's, if you know how to, like, if you're very familiar with things you can do in Photoshop, for example, you can mix and match. You can use blend modes and really start to be creative with your use of assets in generative art. I've done that. Like my Genesis piece on Hiket not this. If it ever loads, was using image assets. Yeah, so this is a generative piece made in P5 with an image of a burb as an asset. I don't have problems with that at all. Rotoscoping. Yeah, I guess I mean, I mean, you'd have to ask us a more specific question maybe, because I don't know. I'm no rotoscoping, but I don't know which, like, would you mean putting a video in and getting an outline of a person, or putting rotoscoping data in? And either way, I mean, you can do this kind of stuff, but like human body segmentation kind of stuff is not so doable by default in P5, but you can find things that do it. Putting video in, motion tracking. Oh yeah, motion tracking. Yeah, you can do that. It's not built into P5, but there's something called hands-free JS, for example, that does it. And yeah, you can track hands, you can track body, face, and hands. Yeah, so pose, face mesh, and all of this works in the browser. I think the body tracking is 2D. Like it's not actually giving you the 3D data about the body, but yeah, that is possible. I haven't used hands-free yet myself, but yeah, you can do that. All right. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I can show you a bit of 3D. I wish I could show you some of those, but don't seem to. Okay. Yeah, this one is loading. Yeah. So yeah, say this one, for example, it is actually 3D, even though it doesn't look like it. It's I'm rotating a shape around. I don't even remember what it was. Was it a square? But yeah, I'm actually rotating something in 3D. I think I'm rotating a circle because I was trying to make a torus in the worst possible way, and yeah, this was what it is. What? I guess this one wasn't going full screen at all. Oh, now it's loading. Okay. Oh, I thought this one was going full screen. Well, I can zoom in. So yeah. That's not the answer to your question, or any question. But yeah. And the latest series I'm doing is it's also made in P5, but it's using blend modes to get this kind of crystal looking thing. And they're not all crystally so much. And these are not running in the browser because they would be very slow. So those are exported as GIF. So that's another thing to say, like on Hiketnunk, one of the things that are amazing on Hiketnunk and that is quite unique to the site, though now there's FX Hash that is also offering something similar, is that it actually runs the sketch in the browser. So what we do here and make it interactive, I could conceivably just download the sketch and mint it on Hiketnunk right now, and you would be able to play with it inside the website. If for example your sketch is not performant enough for real time, like it's the case with that latest series of mine, I could try to optimize it, or I just export it as a GIF, and that's what I did. So this is not interactive. But it's I think it's worth it. There used to be a little logo that would tell you that a piece is interactive. I guess I need to talk to Manit Kaur for that. But yeah, at some point it was removed. Nobody knows why. But so you can't tell that one is a GIF and one is an interactive. So that's a bit of a shame. And then another thing that you can do with interactives, which is a little more advanced, and that's something that we might cover in a future lesson, is hopefully, at least that's what we discussed with Miko, is that you can make artwork that is aware of its own market somehow. I don't know how best to explain that, but I made this piece that is that destroys itself based on how many editions are sold. So it's well, conceptually, it's the text of a chapter of The Wealth of Nation by Adam Smith. It's an economist and philosopher, and he introduced the idea of the concept. He came up with the concept of the invisible hand of the market that is supposed to guide rich people in doing what's best for all of us, which obviously works super well. And it's one of the foundational, like the pillars, the sort of theoretical pillars of the neoliberal movement. And so I took that text, and it's put like in a not specifically legible way. And every time somebody buys an edition, it destroys a few more letters from the text. So sort of turning capitalism onto itself, like an Ouroboros, or a snake eating its own tail. Yeah, that's that. And the way that this works is by using the indexer of Hic-et-Nunc, Hictex, made by Marching Square, which gives you access to data from the blockchain. And so you can make tons of really interesting things, and artists have been playing around with it. I had a collection of those. I don't know if I want to show this now, because then I won't have anything to show next time. Oh, why is it not showing? They delete. Okay. No, it was an old version apparently. Yeah. So some artists have used it to make all kinds of interesting interactive things. Do I actually have some here? Oh, no, I don't. Okay. But yeah, you can check, for example, New Yellow or Yazid. You can make artworks that talk to each other. So, for example, Yazid has been making artworks where you can buy a color swatch, and it will be applied to another artwork. Let me see if I can find it. Andreas Rau also made an artwork that if you buy more than one edition, then it gets destroyed for you, so you can't see it anymore. It collapses. But yeah, here, for example, see, you have this piece, and if I bought a bunch of those color swatches and then I bought this piece, it would get the colors of the swatches that I bought. And that was true for a bunch of those pieces that Yazid was making at the time. I think this one. I don't know if I think I have. I think I had some of those. No, I don't. Okay. So I can't really show you, but yeah, you can do that. And yeah, there's really no limits to. Well, there are some limits, but you can really do a lot of be very experimental with it. Interactive aspect of the piece is an interesting concept. So each collector that buys the piece on the secondary could play around with it and leave its mark on it, like a never-ending work in progress. Yeah, you could do that. Like, well, not in the sense that they could decide what would happen, because that's not really technically feasible. But you could use the data from like the history of transactions of a piece. Like you could look at the trades that happened, and then based on that data, this one's going to be more interesting. So yeah, based on the history of transactions, you could say like, okay, I look at all the people who ever owned it, and then they each gonna leave a trace somehow on there, or maybe all their names would be on there. Mario Klingemann was the first one to do something like this. So he made a piece that it was also a piece that destroyed itself, I didn't actually remember it when I made mine, but his version is very different. It's there's an image, and every time somebody buys the piece, their wallet address gets superimposed on the piece, and so the more people buy it or sell it to someone else, the more the artwork disappears behind all their wallet IDs. So technically, it's similar. Conceptually, it's quite different. But yeah, you can do that, and you can also check like what other artworks a collector owns from you, and then it will appear the piece will appear different. You could say like, okay, it's going to look more and more beautiful the more pieces of my creations you own. Yeah, you can have fun with this kind of incentives. And one thing I should mention is it's not like a safe thing. You can't make like exclusive content that only one person will see, because it's very easy to fake your identity and pass fake data, like pretend that you are a collector to see what they would see. But it's conceptually interesting. It's not a way to make unlockable content. That wouldn't work. All right. Let me see. What time is it, and how much time do we still have? I think we have another hour. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So if we don't have more questions about this, we'll want to show you a little bit more of P5. I'm going to close a bunch of those. Doop, 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 doop. Okay. Good. So let's make a new sketch. Gonna name it 2021 11/15. Vertical crypto residency tutorial 3D. All right. Oh, I saw Natal wanted to ask something. Feel free to ask. I'm still happy to answer any questions you have. All right. So for 3D, pretty much the same. I mean, we drew a circle before, but we can draw something else. We could draw a cube. So say I want to draw a cube. I don't know exactly what the parameters are. Let me try that. No, it's not happy. Cube is not defined. No, it's box. Box is only supported in WebGL mode. Aha. So yeah, our canvas, if we want to do 3D, our canvas needs to be a 3D canvas, and that uses something called WebGL. If you play games, maybe you heard of OpenGL. That is a sort of 3D library that is used by a lot of games. WebGL is a web-based graphics library. WebGL stands for Web Graphics Library, and it's kind of the same as OpenGL. It's basically what deals with displaying 3D on your screen, because well, I won't get into what that is, what that means in details. That's quite a complex topic. But if you're interested to learn how 3D graphics work, there's a beautiful website you can look at, which is called Making WebGL Dense. And it goes into detail as to how 3D graphics are working. And it's a kind of interactive presentation. And you can also watch the video, which is a great presentation. So yeah, I'm not going to explain all of this, but it tells you, yeah, okay, how do we get from a platonic 3D shape to displaying pixels on a screen, and what that involves. Definitely recommend it if you're interested in this kind of topic. Gets a bit nerdy, but very interesting. Yeah, bye, Natal. No problem. Okay, so box is supported in WebGL. Okay, let's try again. Okay, now we have a box. It doesn't look 3D though. So what we might need to do is to rotate it. So let's say rotate frame count. I always like to use frame count for animation because it's fast. Oh, and now it looks like my piece. I did the piece that I didn't show you. That's funny. 1,000 years. Yeah, that's a square that will slow down for 1,000 years. If it ever appears. Okay, so well, it basically looks like that. Okay, so let's make this a little bigger. 800 by 100. Yeah. All right. So what if we rotate it slower for starters? And multiply frame count by a smaller number. And we want to rotate it in different directions as well. So can I give it a different parameter and a different speed on each axis? Oh. Tate was expecting no more than 2. Ah. Really? The second parameter. Okay, let's see. Like, let's do rotate X, rotate Y, and rotate Z. Okay, rotate X, rotate Y, rotate Z, and change the speed on each of those. Yeah, there you go. Okay, that's good. Maybe a little too fast still. 2, 3. Okay, so yeah, now we have 3D. Following here. So, and say I don't redraw the background, and now it's the piece of generative art. And say we scale it down over time, like we start 500 by 500 by 800, I don't know, and scale frame count, not frame count, but 1 minus frame count multiplied by, I'm just trying stuff now, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, it gets smaller over time. Yeah, there you go. Rotates, gets smaller, rotates, gets smaller. Boom. Yeah, see, you don't need to
That's
write a
cool.
lot of code. Boom.
Yeah.
Oh, well, now it's going back up. I didn't expect that. Ah, because when it gets smaller, okay. Yeah, now it's negative dimensions, but it still gets bigger. Okay, yeah. So we could say like scale var equals this, and if we want it to be only like to stop at 0, we could say minimum value between 0 and this. For S, and then use S here. Oh, interesting. Oh no, maximum is the maximum value. Okay, and now it's going to go to 0 and stay there because 0 will be the maximum value because the other one will be negative, I hope. Right. What do you think? There you go. It looks actually pretty nice. That's pretty cool for a 5-minute sketch. I could add lights, like a rose. Yeah, totally. And then you see you can change the parameters. So if we were to do something on fx hash, so what is fx hash? So fx hash, it's this new marketplace that came out last week. There's basically like art blocks, but for Tezos. And so you can make a generative system, and then every time somebody buys one, they mint it. Actually, they mint a new one, and it creates a new one. And so here we could say like we would plug the hash into those parameters here, and I would call it like var x speed equal 0.01 or y speed, except I would give it a value based on the hash of the transaction, 0.02 var z speed equal 0.03. And we'll replace this here, x speed, y speed, and z speed. So now it's the same, but say I was to change this, and this one as well, and this one like that. Now it's going to look different. And I could change other things. I can change the colors, I can change the offset, and I could this way create generate an infinite number of random things. That's what, and I don't particularly like the term because I think it's misleading. Not on purpose, but just the choice of term is a little confusing. A long form generative art, that's how Tyler Hobbs called it. And I feel it's confusing because, well, this is long form generative art. It lasts for 1,000 years, but it's not based on the definition of Tyler Hobbs. For him, long form is kind of what we talked about just now, art blocks or FX hash, where you create a system of rules, like some of you mentioned at the beginning, and then every time somebody buys one, in this case, but whatever, every time you generate it, it changes the parameters more or less randomly and creates variations on it. And it's long form in the sense that you have to create a system that can generate enough variation that it will always, that generates enough variation while still looking good. Because it's easy to make something that is completely random every time. But first it has to look different enough, and then it has to look good when it does. So there's an art to this, and that's what Tyler calls long form. I think we should find a better word for that, because I like the idea of also having work that is long time. Maybe it will be called long time generative art instead. But yeah, it's more like wide form generative art. But anyway, yeah. So we could change that. We could say like, what if I said color mode Hsb, and then fill frame count, or let's say hue, saturation, and brightness. Var hue is going to be equal to map frame count. No, that's not right. I'm going to use a sine function. Ooh, math. Oh no, we said no math. Sine of frame count times 0.01. You don't actually really need to know what is a sine function for this to work, but I'm going to use a sine function anyway. It goes from -1 to 1, and I want it to go from, say, 200. I don't remember what those values are, like what colors those are, but we'll see. Var saturation equals, well, for now I'm going to keep it at 80, say 70, and brightness is going to be 90. Okay, it's changing, but not very fast. Yeah, no, it is. Okay. All right, so now it's going from a sort of purplish blue to almost cyan. So we could make this range a little bigger. 300. And it goes to purple. I'm not a big fan of sort of rainbow sweeping in this way. It's a little. It's been it's a bit too easy, and so it's been done a lot. But yeah, we could also use a color palette, or we could sample from an image. And there's many ways that you can get colors. That's a whole other topic. But yeah, there you go, 3D. 3D. Anything else you want to see? And yeah, I mean, if you go to the reference, you can see there's tons of things that we haven't covered clearly. So yeah, well, data, events. Yeah, you can use the rotation of your phone. If you run it on the phone, you get no, wait, that's not it, but it is. You can actually do that. Oh yeah, no, it is. Okay, acceleration. Yeah, so you can use the orientation of the phone as an input. It won't work on a desktop computer or on a laptop, but it will work on a mobile device. You get all the inputs from your mouse. What else do we have? Yeah, we can load data from files. We get time of day, things like that. Yeah, your day, hour, minute. That's actually what I did for this one. I just check which time it is, like which day we are, and how close we are to the 21st of March, 3021. And that defines the speed of the square, the speed of the rotation. What else is interesting in there? Yeah, random seed, we've seen that. You can use text. So yeah, you can use fonts. You can add fonts and use them. Yeah. Oh, we could try blend mode here. What if we did blend mode subtract, for example? That doesn't work in. Does it work? Doesn't seem to work. Blend mode difference. Doesn't seem to work. Interesting. Maybe it doesn't work in 3D. Right. So yeah. Yeah, let me know if there's some specific topics that you'd be interested in. I can respond. I can explore specific topics. There's yeah, sound is an option as well, but it's in a separate. It has a separate library. So there's P5 sound with its own vocabulary. I don't think I really want to get into this because I'm not a sound person, and I haven't used it that much. Every time I try to do it from scratch, I I fail. So I'm gonna do it live and embarrass myself. But yeah, if you have specific requests, let me know. Otherwise, I can just keep going and tweak this and try things. I don't know. We can try a different shape. What else? What other 3D shapes are there? Shape, arc, ellipse, no. Okay, triangle. Ah, yeah, there you go. Box, sphere, cylinder, torus. Could try torus. Oh yeah, that could be interesting. Torus, you can also change this parameter. That one. So that could look nice. Torus. 2 parameters. Okay, yeah, there you go. So yeah, the 2 default parameters. Oh, they're all optional. Okay. 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 Oh, this is gonna be too much. Oh. All right. It's a bit fast. Yeah, okay. Nice. Make some smooth gradients. Yeah, see, you could change the shape and that would be an extra parameter. Wow, that's nice. I kind of want to not use the black stroke because it's a bit too strong. How about making it kind of white? Stroke 250. That's pretty nice. Oh, we could make it slightly transparent, maybe, if that works. I'm not sure that works in 3D. Oh, but that's pretty nice. Yeah, it looks shiny. Let's try transparency. I'm afraid it's not gonna work, but yeah, no, it doesn't. And one thing we could do is to draw on a separate buffer and then blend this, which is a trick I often use. Looks pretty good though. So, oh yeah, one thing I didn't mention, you can just save an image. So yeah, I can just save this and I can then mint it. Boom, it's done. New 1.1. Yeah. So what else can we do with a torus? There were other parameters. See, like if I do this like that, 3, whatever, like this. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Right-click save. Right-click save. Oh, one thing I should mention. Okay, no, that's important, but actually, that is very important. Why didn't you ask me about the templates? I have a bunch of templates that are available for Hiketnunk here. So yeah, no, this is a little more advanced, but yeah, if you want to get if you're already sort of familiar with programming a little bit or JavaScript, or you feel very excited after what you saw today, I have these templates here that you can use to directly mint things to Hiketnunk. And yeah, there's I mentioned before artworks that respond to who's looking at them or who's collecting them, and there's templates for that. We'll have a separate lesson for that, probably, most likely. So yeah, you don't have to look into this, but yeah, if you can't wait to get started, they are there. These templates are there. You can use them. There's one for having a loader for 3D, like for if you're loading heavy assets or 3D objects. Yeah, responsive one. That is pretty much what we were looking at before, except making it scale up and down, like making the content also scale up and down. So that's kind of useful if you wanted to, well, for example, if you wanted to stay square even when the window changes, you can do that. And if you want the content to adapt and look good also on mobile, yeah, you can use that template. There's an easier way to do it. Well, it depends what you're trying to do. But yeah, I figured out there's an easier way to do it after I made it, but you can still use it. It's still good. And basically what it gives you is it gives you the flexibility to choose what should be responsive in your sketch and what potentially shouldn't, or scale things different ways. Like not everything has to be 1:1. It could also be different based on the size. So yeah, this is kind of flexible. Yeah, so these templates you can find there. And if you're a GitHub person, they're also on GitHub. So I think the link is in there as well. Yeah, probably the latest and greatest are on GitHub. It's hard to maintain code in 2 different places. So yeah. Yeah, that's that. Okay. No questions still? I kind of need input to keep going. I also need to know what you want. Like what kind of things would you like to do with code? Because I can help you for another half hour. So now is the time to ask. I mean, I'm happy to reply to DMs as well, but I may not always be able to do that. So you have the luxury of my presence right now. See how humble I am. No, but seriously though, you're here to extract knowledge. You have to press me like a lemon and get as much knowledge as you can. That is your job. Yeah, what else? Cult is typing. Yes. Squeeze me like a lemon. Oh yeah, well, I have you. I also, if you want to have some inspiration and keep being showered with creative code knowledge and inspiration, I have 2 weekly streams on Twitch. One is a Creative Code News. That's tomorrow. Every Tuesday is where I review some of the cool stuff that happened in the world of creative coding every week. So yeah, twitch.com/Sable. You can find it here. And yeah, basically on Tuesdays, I review a lot of cool things that I found in the world of creative coding. And on Sundays, there's a Creative Code Challenge where we pick a topic. Every week, there's a new topic. This week, the topic is likely to be. Let me see. The vote is still going, but I think it was kind of clear what the winner was. Wait, I can't actually see the votes because of the picture-in-picture. I think it's gonna be album cover probably. Yeah, very likely. So last week was non-rectangular tilings, and we had some really cool things that people made. Yeah, I can also showcase the creativity of the community. So Ronnie did this beautiful sort of abstract city generator with different kinds of palettes. What else did we have? Somebody made a church. Yeah, this one was kind of beautiful as well. And everything is beautiful, of course. But yeah, there you go. Like these birds by Alexandra. Yeah, so feel free to join. You're going to try to extract knowledge. Okay, so you wanted to have a question, but you're still figuring out how you would connect generative art with your research. Just silly question. Okay, that's fine. Your art mainly focuses on pop art, romance, comic covers, and you were wondering how you would integrate an aspect of generative art to it. Pop art romance comic cover. Pop art romance. I mean, you can. Oh yeah, people are trolling me with this. With this dense sketch. Anyway, so like pop art. Can I find your art? Pop art by Beba. Can I find you somewhere? Let's see. I see. Yeah, I mean, could imagine generating patterns for background like this. For example, this you could, yeah, you could easily generate something like this and have a bunch of different ones, or make them dynamic, generative, and move. Let me see what is could be inspiring as well. For generative, like, yeah, patterns like this. There's a beautiful or stuff like that. Totally. Yeah, I can totally imagine that these patterns could be generative, or even these shapes. Let me see. The P5 pattern, like this. Yeah. So Sayama made a library that lets you add patterns to anything. Sayama is an amazing artist. Big fan. There's a fantastic creative coding scene in Japan, and Sayama is one of the great representatives of it. Why can't I find Sayama? I'm pretty sure I follow them. Sayama P5. Maybe you know Takao as well. Takao Shunsuke was making those masks, and he's been also using that pattern library, I believe, at some point. If I can find the ones, but it was a few weeks ago, so might have got buried. Made a book. There's lots of tweets about the book. Okay. Where Sayama is? What happened to Sayama? Not on Twitter? Or yeah, whatever. These things about connecting parameters with specific data like time, cells, wallet address. Yeah. No, it's great. It's you can really have fun with that. And yeah, I mean, I wanted to try something else. Let's see. Let me create a new one again. How about box? Uh-huh. Webgl. I want to try something. Okay. Rotate Y and rotate Z. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you could make something like this. I'm looking at these here. And I think you should be able to add a camera. Okay. No, a light. I meant a light. Camera is cool, but wanted a light. Light, directional light, point light. Yeah, not sure that will actually do what we want, but White light. Let's try it. White light. Okay. Oh wow. Why is it yellow? I don't know. Yeah, but see, that's what kind of what I wanted to do. Was to have one side that's in the shadow and one side that is the light, but actually the light is inside the cube when it's big. So, but yeah, you could make more dynamic elements and have them collaged on top of your piece, and say we wanted to have like a random lines. So line random width. Say like slate random. It's random height. Okay, and then a line 0, 0, 10, 10. Stroke weight. We're gonna make a bunch of random sprinkles everywhere. Stroke weight 5. I'm gonna limit it to the line. Push and pop. Yeah, okay, minus was divided by 2 was divided by 2 because in 3D mode the coordinates, the 0 is in the middle, so we need to change that to be the top left corner is actually width divided by minus width divided by 2 minus height divided by 2. Yeah, and now we have like these sprinkles a little bit everywhere. For example, it's kind of not exactly this, but but like in 1 minute, that's as close as I can get. Yeah, but I think like collage is you can really have fun with collage, and you could use assets as well, and like put images here and add colors and really like take this to the next level. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is fun. Yeah, something like this. You could totally also place a GIF in there and have these GIFs move around. Yeah. All right. So I don't know. I mean, if people need to go, we can also wrap up. But I have more time if you want to see more stuff. I don't want to drag it longer than it needs to. Is it possible to create a live painting brush of an image? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you can do that. So, yeah, it's actually an example I often take as a start. Like if you want to paint something, I mean, if you want to draw an image, you can import assets here. We didn't see that, but I could upload a file, select anything. Like I don't know what would be. Okay, I'll take this one. Yes, how is it called? Oh, great! I picked the one with the longest possible name. Great choice. Rename. Oh yeah, there you go. bg.png, let's say. And so here I need to create a function preload because we want to load our assets before we do anything else. I'm going to give it a name before, var image equals nothing. and here image equal load image. And pass it the name bg.png. This should work. So now it's loading. We can't really see it, but it was saying loading. And here background, instead of background, I will draw the image. Imge. Okay, it's not happy. Yeah, I need to give it a position for the image. So the image 0, 0. That's the top left corner. I think. Oh, I thought it was. So 0, 0 width, height. There you go. So now it's filling the canvas. It's going to get stretched if I change the size, but let's say that's not the point so much. So yeah, so now I'm drawing the image to the back. And if I wanted to draw something, I could say circle mouse X, mouse Y, 20, say. And now I have a circle that follows me, but it's not writing anything. And that's because we redraw the image every frame. So what we could do is instead, we draw the image once in the setup, and then now I'm drawing on top of it. If we wanted to make it a real brush and add some effects, there's ways to do that. That's something I've done in the past. Can show you an old project of mine. Here, I created a brush tool that is sort of simulating an actual paintbrush, and it can look sort of realistic or get a little wacky. Though I think even the wackier variation would be possible with like a metal brush. I think you see it towards the end. Yeah, this kind of stuff you could actually do with a metal brush. But yeah, so you can this doesn't come out of the box. You need to put some quite some coding effort in there to get this kind of effects, but it's totally reachable. And this I did in the first year that I learned processing. So just for perspective, I was a designer. I had done a little programming, but really not much. I didn't know anything. I learned about processing in 2012, and I did this like a couple months after I started creative coding. So it's feasible. I mean, if you don't get to that kind of result in a couple months, don't be discouraged. Just we'll have our own journey. But yeah, it is possible. And another thing, another kind of brush-like project I did was for the Graffiti Research Lab Berlin back in 2013, and I did the sort of spray simulator, not the menu, the color picker and stuff, but just that brush thing to simulate the spray quality, the quality of a graffiti spray. There was a lot more to it. It looks all right, but you could actually tweak, like pick different. We never really did it, but you could have picked different caps and get different effects. I thought I had it on somewhere there on Vimeo, but I can't seem to find it. No, apparently I don't. Apparently not. Yeah. But yeah, you can. Yeah, I really like drawing tools, and this is a classic kind of thing that you can make with creative coding. Normally add 2D drawings to my 3D renders to play with UI concepts. I'm learning how to make it live and fading to record it animated. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can really have fun with this. There's also a DOM library in P5.js which lets you manipulate the documents, like the HTML around it. You can use all the stuff from an HTML page. You can make buttons and sliders and things like that if you want to. All of this is possible. Showcase. Is there some cool stuff in the showcase? I've never seen that page. Okay. Cyber Forest. Honey. There's not too much in there. That showcase. Cyber Forest. What is this? Enter to start, press to jump. Okay, that's a game. I lost. Okay. I can jump. Okay, it's like a dinosaur game. All right. That's funny. No idea what is in this showcase. Paperspace. Let's try another one. Okay. That's a there you go. That's a drawing tool. It's a cool one. This would this could be done in not too much time. Yeah, you can this in the end it's a bunch of circles with a bit of noise and colors that vary over time. Yeah, very cool. Right. What else? Oh yeah. So before I leave you, I also have something to share. Something I have a present for you, which is a list of resources that you can use to learn more. So first of all, if you don't know where to start for tutorials and stuff like that, and also if you think that some of the stuff that we covered today was a bit overwhelming, it's totally normal. At the beginning I went quite slow, but towards the end I was like just blasting through some stuff and just trying stuff and not really explaining what I was doing. So it was just a bit to give you an idea of what can be done. But I didn't really expect you to like all of you to follow all of it. So don't worry about it. Really don't. It's if you want the best teacher in the world for P5.js, the Programming with P5.js tutorial series by one you want. Look at him. He's so happy. And he's an amazing teacher. So I really recommend going there. And on this page, you have a bunch of other resources. There's also a Computational Mama on Twitch, who's doing some cool stuff there. Shinshin on YouTube. She has some awesome tutorials on when you're wondering about some specific topics like experimental typography. So yeah, there you go. You can learn about how to make some interesting stuff with type. And she's also super cool. The Dot is Black is a great one. So yeah, I have a bunch of resources in there, some podcasts, some videos, like sort of introductory videos and presentations about what is creative code or what is generative art. Some examples there and some communities you can join, including my own Burbs Nest Discord, where I already mentioned, where we have the challenges every week and the Creative Code news. But yeah, there's a bunch of other ones. P5 has their own Discord, which I also recommend. Coding Train from Dan Schiffman. So yeah, this is my present for you. There you go. If you have any questions, you can also reach out. As I said, it's getting a bit harder these days. Oh, I didn't exactly say that, but it's getting a little bit harder these days to answer all the messages, but please, please reach out on my Discord, and there, if I see your question, I can answer it, or somebody from the community will, because they are very helpful and friendly people, and I take great care to make it a welcoming community. So you're already on Discord, so yeah, you can just hop into the Burb's Nest. I'll put the invitation link in there. Well. And yeah, there's a help channel there. There's a P5 channel, so you can go there and ask questions. And yeah, we have some very knowledgeable people there, like even people who are much more knowledgeable than I am, who can answer all of your questions. And if I know the answer, I will be happy to help you out. Yeah, and if you have any last questions or comments or anything, yeah, I'm still there. We can hang out for another 10. Yeah, thanks. Glad you liked it. Occulted, thank you. Yeah, I'm very curious to see if or how you implement this in your own work. If you don't, it's still knowledge that is helpful to know, because there's a diversity of art forms out there, and I think that's good general knowledge as well. But yeah, try maybe as an exercise, just try to think in the next few days what we've seen today, how you could implement it in your own work, and then next time we don't have a date yet, but next time we'll get a little more into detail on how to make those interactive NFTs that you can mint on Hiketnung. We'll go all the way from empty sketch to minting on Hiketnung with interactivity with the blockchain. So, the indexer. Well, technically yes, but not not actually writing stuff to the blockchain, but reading data from the marketplace. Yeah, have fun, experiment. Feel free to mention me on Twitter if you make stuff and yeah, you use any of what we've seen today. I'd be happy to see that. I'm Sable Raph on Twitter as well, and yeah, that's it. I'm Sable Raph on Twitter, on Discord, pretty much everywhere. You can find me there under that name. And yeah, I hope to see you all later again, in some other places, and enjoy your art. So yeah, have fun with the rest of the residency. How long is how much more do you have with the residency? I haven't really looked into I'm not great with time and chronology in general, but I have no idea. Cool. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. Yeah, that was the point, really, to give you a taste. In just a few hours, we can only hope to scratch the surface, but yeah, I wanted to show you a bit of context and how it works, and show you that it's not that scary. Code can be fun. Yeah, and you only need to know a little bit to have fun with it. You don't need to. With what you've learned today, you could already do stuff. You can already experiment, and you learn on the way. You'll learn more as you go. With just the basics, you can already do a lot. And there's no right way or wrong way to do things. You're not going to break your computer by writing the wrong line. Worst thing that happens, the tab in your browser crashes as you close it. That's also important. I remember when I started learning coding, that was actually one of the things I was scared of. I was like, oh, but am I gonna break my computer if I write the wrong thing? Not gonna happen. Don't worry about it. It's fine. And yeah, and everybody does it in a different way. When I review stuff on my Twitch channel, it's the same. Like, people are all writing code in a different way, and it's fine. Whatever works. In the end, you're writing the code for yourself. So yeah, that's the fun thing with creative coding. You're not writing in a team where you have to follow rules. You can do whatever you want. Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, thanks, Miko. Hey, you're back. So yeah, I'll let you go then, and I'll see you around. Bye, everybody.